The accident. The late afternoon sun had painted the small suburban park in a warm golden hue, turning every leaf and blade of grass into a reflection of light and calmness. Emma Carter sat on the weathered wooden bench, her soft eyes following her 6-year-old son, Noah, as he darted around the playground, his laughter carrying across the open air like music. It was one of those rare, peaceful moments that Emma cherished after a long week of teaching at the local elementary school. She was proud of the life she had built, quiet, modest, but full of meaning and love. Everything she did revolved around her son, her little miracle, her reason to keep breathing after the storm that had nearly destroyed her years ago. She didn't think about the past anymore, or at least she tried not to. The past was a locked room in her heart, one she had vowed never to open again. But fate, it seemed, had its own cruel sense of timing. The laughter stopped. It happened in an instant, like the world had taken a sudden breath and refused to exhale. Emma's heart clenched as she heard a dull, sickening thud, followed by a piercing cry that cut through her soul. She turned, her eyes locking on Noah lying motionless at the foot of the metal slide. Her body froze for half a second before instinct took over. She dropped the papers she'd been grading, her bag falling to the dirt, and sprinted toward him, her voice breaking as she shouted his name. "Noah! Oh my God, Noah!" Every sound around her faded. The birds, the other children, the whispers of startled parents, all became a distant hum as panic filled her ears with a pounding rush. When she reached him, her knees hit the ground hard enough to scrape, but she didn't care. Noah was crying, but not moving his arm, which was twisted in a way that made her stomach turn. His little face was pale, tears streaking through the dust on his cheeks as he tried to move and whimpered in pain. "Mommy, it hurts," he gasped, clutching his small hand against his chest. Emma's vision blurred as she blinked away tears. Her hands trembled, but her voice came out calm, instinctively strong, controlled by the part of her that had once studied nursing before life had taken her down a different road. "Don't move it, sweetheart. Mommy's here, okay? You're safe, you're safe." She brushed a strand of his dark brown hair from his forehead and scanned the area for help. The nearest parent, a woman she barely knew, rushed over. "Should I call 911? The woman asked, wide-eyed. Emma took a deep breath and shook her head quickly. "No, just drive me. The hospital's 10 minutes away." She could hear the woman's car keys jingling as she nodded and ran toward the parking lot. Emma carefully lifted Noah into her arms, trying to steady his broken arm as best she could. He was growing heavier with age, but in that moment he felt as light as when he was a baby, because fear made her stronger than she ever was. She pressed his head against her shoulder, whispering words she barely understood herself. "It's okay, baby. We're almost there. I've got you. I promise I've got you." The drive to the hospital was agony. Every bump on the road made Noah cry out in pain, and every cry cut deeper into Emma's heart. The driver tried to help by going faster, the red lights blurring into streaks as the car raced through the quiet streets of Riverside. Emma's hands shook as she clutched Noah tighter, whispering stories to distract him, anything to make him forget the pain. "Do you remember how Superman got hurt once?" she murmured, her voice cracking. "He still saved the day after, didn't he? You're just like him. You'll be okay. You'll be stronger after this." But she wasn't sure who she was reassuring more, her son or herself. When they finally pulled up to the glowing white letters of Riverside General Hospital, Emma didn't wait for the car to stop completely. She pushed open the door, ran across the emergency entrance barefoot because her sandal strap had broken, and screamed for help. Inside, everything moved in fragments. Nurses in blue scrubs rushing forward, the metallic scent of antiseptic filling her nose, the harsh white lights that made everything look unreal. "Possible fracture, left forearm," she heard herself say, her voice sounding like it belonged to someone else. 5 years old, fell from a slide. The triage nurse nodded briskly and motioned her toward a curtained area. "We'll get x-rays right away, ma'am. Sit tight." Emma followed the instructions like she was on autopilot. Her whole body felt numb except for the burning ache in her chest. She sat beside Noah on the hospital bed, clutching his hand, whispering nonsense to keep him calm. But as she glanced around the pediatric emergency ward, memories clawed at the edges of her mind. Memories she had buried deep. The sterile smell, the soft beeping monitors, the faint echo of crying children. It all felt too familiar. She hadn't been in this hospital since the night she'd given birth to Noah 6 years ago, and that night had changed everything. When the curtain finally swished open, Emma turned, expecting a stranger, a young doctor, maybe someone new, detached, efficient. But the universe had other plans. The man who stepped in wore a white coat over dark scrubs, his hair slightly tousled as if he'd been running from one patient to another. He looked up from the clipboard in his hand, ready to deliver the usual calm reassurance. But when his eyes met hers, everything stopped. The clipboard slipped from his fingers and hit the floor with a hollow clatter. "Emma?" His voice cracked softly as if saying her name for the first time in years broke something inside him. Emma's breath hitched. She felt her world tilt, her pulse roaring in her ears. It couldn't be. Not him. Not now. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was louder than any sound in the room. The last time she had seen Nathan Hayes was 6 years ago, on a rainy night full of shouting, tears, and shattered promises. He had been the love of her life, the man she had dreamed of marrying, the one she had trusted with every piece of her heart. And now he was standing in front of her again, older, sharper, with tired eyes that carried the weight of years. But those eyes still had the same green fire she remembered. "Nathan," she whispered, her voice unsteady. He blinked, his face pale as though he were looking at a ghost. Then his gaze drifted to the small boy sitting on the hospital bed. Noah looked up, his big brown eyes wide and tear-streaked. "Mommy, is he my doctor?" he asked softly, his good hand gripping Emma's sleeve. Nathan crouched down instinctively, his doctor's composure slipping back into place. "Hey, buddy," he said gently, his tone calm and warm, but his eyes lingered on the boy's face. His dark hair, the shape of his nose, the familiar dimples that mirrored his own. He blinked as realization crept in, something raw flickering across his expression. "Yeah," he said softly. "I'm your doctor. My name's Dr. Hayes." He turned to Emma, searching her face for answers she wasn't ready to give. Her heart hammered as she avoided his gaze, focusing instead on Noah's trembling hand. Nathan began examining Noah's arm, his movements professional but tense, every gesture precise, deliberate. Emma could tell he was fighting to stay composed, but his silence was heavy. When he touched Noah's arm, the boy winced, and Nathan's jaw tightened. "It's okay, little man," he murmured. "You're being very brave." Emma bit her lip to stop herself from crying. The tenderness in Nathan's voice, once hers, once something she had loved, was now directed toward a child who didn't know the truth. Nathan looked at the X-ray request form, then back at Emma. "It looks like a possible fracture. We'll need an X-ray to confirm, but don't worry, it's fixable. He'll heal completely." He smiled at Noah, then added, "You'll be a superhero again in no time." Noah managed a small smile, and for a moment, Emma saw her son's pain fade into curiosity. As the nurse wheeled Noah away for imaging, Nathan placed a hand on Emma's arm. It was a simple, reflexive gesture, one of reassurance, but it sent a shock through her body, a flood of memories she wasn't ready to face. "Emma," he said quietly, "can we talk? Just for a minute?" She hesitated, torn between walking away and confronting what she had avoided for years. She nodded slowly. They stepped into the hallway, the air thick between them. Nathan ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit she still remembered. "You live here now?" he asked, trying to steady his tone. "Yeah," she said softly. "I've been here for years." His jaw tightened. "And Noah?" His voice faltered. Emma looked down, unable to meet his eyes. "He's my son," she said simply. But the words hung in the air with a meaning that neither of them could ignore. When Noah returned, his small arm wrapped in a bright blue cast, his face lit up. "Look, Mommy, it's blue, like Superman." Nathan chuckled, though his eyes were shadowed. "That's the best color. Strongest one, too," he said. Noah grinned proudly, showing off the cast as the nurse helped him sign the discharge forms. Emma stood still, feeling the weight of Nathan's presence beside her, his gaze lingering not just on her, but on the boy who carried his smile. Before she left, Nathan handed her a card with his name and direct number scribbled on the back. "Call me if you notice any swelling or pain," he said formally, though his tone was laced with something else, something unspoken. Emma nodded, her fingers brushing his as she took the card, the brief contact igniting the memories she'd buried. "Thank you, Dr. Hayes," she whispered, her voice barely audible. He smiled faintly, but his eyes betrayed the storm inside him. As Emma walked out of the ER, holding Noah close, she felt her heart break all over again. Because she knew the truth, he wasn't just Noah's doctor, he was Noah's father. And now that their paths had crossed again, she wasn't sure she could keep the secret any longer. The confrontation. The following days drifted by in a blur of emotions Emma couldn't name, like waves crashing endlessly against the walls she had built inside herself to keep the past from seeping in. The house that usually echoed with Noah's laughter now felt heavy with silence. A silence that carried questions she didn't want to face. Noah, with his bright blue cast and endless curiosity, was adapting faster than she expected. He proudly showed it off to everyone who visited, even drawing little rockets and stars on it with colored markers. But every time he held up his arm and smiled, Emma's chest tightened. That blue cast had become more than a reminder of his accident. It was a mark of the storm that was returning to her life, one she thought she had escaped forever. Nathan's face haunted her thoughts. The way his eyes had softened when he saw Noah, the shock, the pain, and the lingering familiarity in his voice, it had all pierced her carefully constructed calm. She had lived for 6 years pretending that chapter of her life had closed, convincing herself that what she did had been the right choice. But now, after one accidental fall, destiny had ripped open a wound that never truly healed. That evening, as rain pattered gently against the kitchen window, Emma sat with her laptop open, trying to grade essays from her students but staring blankly at the same page. The hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of cartoons from the living room filled the small house. Noah sat cross-legged on the rug, humming a tune as he colored with his good hand. His imagination had no limits. He was drawing a family of superheroes, and when Emma leaned closer, she froze. There were 3 figures: a mother, a boy, and a tall man in a white coat. "Who's that, baby?" she asked softly, her heart thudding. Noah looked up, his innocent eyes wide. "That's you, that's me, and that's Dr. Hayes. He fixed me. I think he's really nice." His words were innocent, pure, unaware of the storm they triggered inside her. Emma forced a smile, brushing his hair affectionately. "He is nice," she whispered, but her voice wavered. That night, when Noah had fallen asleep, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The shadows in her room seemed to whisper memories of laughter shared in late-night coffee shops, of whispered promises under starlight, of a young woman who believed love could conquer distance. She remembered Nathan's last words to her before he left for his medical residency. "I'll come back for you, Emma. I promise." But promises had a way of breaking when time stretched too far. 3 days after the hospital visit, Emma's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. She picked it up absent-mindedly, expecting a message from the school or a friend. But when she saw the name flash across the screen, her blood ran cold. Nathan Hayes. For a long moment, she just stared at it, her fingers trembling, the air in her lungs frozen. Then she unlocked the phone, and the message appeared simple, almost gentle, yet it carried the weight of 6 years of silence. "Emma, we need to talk. There are things I think I deserve to know, and things Noah deserves to know, too." Her hand shook as she placed the phone down, unable to breathe. He knew. She had seen it in his eyes that day, but now the words confirmed what she feared. He had connected the pieces. Emma sat down at the table, her mind spiraling. What could she possibly say to him? That she had made the hardest choice of her life? That she had kept his son from him because she thought it was best for everyone? Or that she had never stopped loving him even after he walked away? A knock at the door startled her. It was Maria, her best friend since college, the only person who knew everything. Maria stepped in with her usual energy, holding 2 cups of coffee and a bag of muffins. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said, setting the items on the table. Emma let out a shaky laugh that wasn't really a laugh. "I might have," she murmured, sliding her phone across the table. Maria read the message, her brows furrowing. So he knows. He knows, Emma repeated, her voice a whisper. Maria sat opposite her, sighing deeply. Em, you've been carrying this secret for 6 years. Maybe it's time you let go. Maybe it's time he knows he has a son. Emma's eyes filled with tears, her heart aching. And what if he doesn't want to be a part of his life? What if he resents me for keeping it from him? I can't let Noah go through that kind of hurt. He's happy, Maria. I can't risk that. Maria reached across the table and took her hand. You can't protect him from the truth forever. One day, he'll ask questions you can't avoid answering. Don't let that day come with regret. Emma stayed silent for a long moment, the only sound in the kitchen being the ticking clock on the wall. She finally exhaled and whispered, He wants to meet. I don't know if I can face him. Maria squeezed her hand gently. You can. You're stronger than you think. And maybe this time it won't break you. Maybe it'll heal you both. Later that afternoon, after picking up Noah from kindergarten, Emma found herself driving toward the small cafe downtown, Riverside Cafe, a cozy place that smelled of roasted coffee beans and fresh pastries. It was the same cafe where she and Nathan used to study during their college years. The same corner booth where he first told her about his dream of becoming a doctor. The same place where he once promised her that love was worth waiting for. She parked outside and sat in silence for several minutes, her hands gripping the steering wheel, her pulse pounding in her throat. She could see through the window that the cafe wasn't busy. Just a few people, the faint hum of conversation and soft jazz music playing in the background. She felt the weight of every heartbeat as she looked at Noah in the back seat, dozing lightly. She had arranged for Maria to pick him up in 10 minutes. This meeting wasn't for him, not yet. This was the reckoning she could no longer avoid. When she finally walked inside, the familiar scent of coffee hit her like a memory she didn't want to relive. Nathan was already there, sitting by the window, his white shirt rolled up at the sleeves, his hands clasped together on the table as if trying to hold himself steady. He looked up as the bell above the door chimed and their eyes met. For a moment, it was as if 6 years dissolved into nothing. The noise around them disappeared. There was only the weight of what they'd lost and what they'd never said. Emma walked toward him, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her fingertips. You came, he said quietly. His voice was calm, but she could hear the tremor beneath it. She nodded and sat down across from him, avoiding his gaze. I wasn't sure if I should. I wasn't sure if you would, he replied softly. A silence stretched between them, thick with the ghosts of old emotions. Finally, Nathan spoke again, his voice controlled but heavy. I'm not going to waste your time, Emma. I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest. She looked up slowly, her chest tightening. Okay. He hesitated, his jaw clenching slightly. Is Noah mine? The question hung in the air like a thunderclap. Emma froze, her breath catching in her throat. Her fingers twisted in her lap as her mind raced for words, but none came. Nathan's eyes searched her face, desperate for an answer he already knew deep down. Please, he whispered, leaning forward. Don't lie to me. I see him, Emma. I see myself in him. His smile, his eyes, even the way he tilts his head when he's thinking, it's like looking at a mirror of my own childhood. I've gone over it 100 times in my head, trying to convince myself I'm imagining things, but I know I'm not. Emma closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. Nathan, He cut her off gently, his tone breaking. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you let me be there for him, for you? Her voice trembled as she finally spoke. Because you left, she whispered. You chose your residency across the country over us. You said you'd come back, but you didn't. You stopped calling, Nathan. You stopped writing. You disappeared, and I was alone, pregnant, terrified, and heartbroken. I didn't even know if you still cared. He looked stunned, his eyes wide with regret. Emma, I didn't know. My father got sick right after I moved. I was trying to balance my training and his treatments, and by the time I reached out, you were gone. I came back, but you had moved. No one knew where. Emma looked at him through blurred tears. I had to survive. I had to think of my child. I didn't want Noah to grow up wondering why his father wasn't around. I told myself it was better this way. Nathan leaned back, his face etched with pain. You thought keeping me from him would protect him? I thought keeping him safe from heartbreak was better than giving him a father who might not stay. she said, her voice cracking. You left once. I couldn't let him get attached and lose you too. He ran a hand over his face, his voice trembling. You had no right to decide that for me, Emma. He's my son. His words came out like a broken confession, full of anguish and love all at once. Emma wiped her tears, unable to meet his gaze. And he's my whole world, she whispered. Everything I did because I thought it was right. For a long moment they sat in silence, the truth stretching between them like a chasm too deep to cross. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the clouds began to part, allowing slivers of light to spill through the window. Nathan exhaled, his voice softer now. I'm not angry at you, Emma. I'm hurt, yes. But I understand fear. I've lived with my own regrets, too. I want to know him. I want to be part of his life. Please don't shut me out again. His words pierced her heart. She looked at him, seeing not the young man who once left her behind, but a man who had grown, who carried his own scars. For the first time in years, she saw sincerity in his eyes that made her chest ache. She nodded slowly, her tears falling freely now. He deserves to know the truth, she whispered. But promise me, Nathan, if you step into his life, you don't get to walk away again. He's not just my heart. He's yours, too. Nathan's eyes glistened as he reached across the table and took her trembling hand in his. I promise, he said quietly. I won't walk away again. And though the air still carried the weight of old pain, in that moment, something fragile began to heal. For the first time in 6 years, Emma allowed herself to believe that maybe the past didn't have to define their future. The revelation. The days that followed the cafe meeting stretched into a haze of uncertainty and fragile peace, as if the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what Emma and Nathan would do next. The truth had been spoken, but speaking it was only the beginning. Living with it was something far more complicated. Emma found herself walking through her house like someone wandering through a dream, her mind heavy with thoughts that refused to quiet. She watched Noah play with his toys, his laughter echoing through the small living room, and she wondered how she would ever find the words to tell him that the kind doctor who fixed his arm was not just a stranger, but the father he had never known. Each night, after she tucked him into bed and turned off the lamp, she would sit by the door, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing, torn between fear and hope. The storm inside her was relentless. Every decision she had made for 6 years, every sacrifice, every lie told to protect, was beginning to unravel. And somewhere deep down, she knew that this confrontation with truth was inevitable. Nathan, meanwhile, found himself consumed by emotions he could no longer suppress. The image of Noah's small face haunted him during every shift at the hospital. Every child he treated reminded him of the one he had missed raising, the one he should have been there for from the very first breath. He would walk through the pediatric ward, smiling at parents, offering comfort and reassurance, but inside he carried a hollow ache that no medical achievement could cure. Late at night, when the hospital grew quiet and the soft hum of machines replaced the daytime chaos, he would sit alone in the break room staring at his phone, resisting the urge to message Emma. He wanted to give her time, to let her process everything. But patience had never been easy for him, especially when it came to matters of the heart. When his shift ended, he drove aimlessly around the city, his thoughts drifting to the past. He remembered the way Emma used to laugh at his terrible coffee habits, the way she would hum softly while studying, and the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about becoming a teacher. He had never stopped loving her. He had only buried that love beneath years of regret and exhaustion. And now, fate had given him something more powerful than a second chance. It had given him a reason to fight for it. It was a Friday afternoon when he finally texted her again. I'd like to see him if you'll let me. Just for a little while. No pressure, no explanations. I just want to spend time with my son. Emma stared at the message for a long time before replying. She didn't know what scared her more, the idea of Nathan meeting Noah again or the possibility of it going well. Her fingers hovered over the screen, her mind screaming with doubts, but her heart whispered something else entirely. She finally typed back, "Okay, tomorrow, the park near Riverside, 3 p.m. The moment she pressed send, her chest tightened. There was no going back now. That night she couldn't sleep. She sat by Noah's bedside, watching him as he dreamed, his small hand resting over the bright blue cast that still covered his arm. The doctor had said it would come off soon, that he was healing faster than expected. But Emma couldn't help thinking about the irony, that it was the injury that had led to this moment, the accident that had brought Nathan back into their lives. She brushed a lock of hair from Noah's forehead and whispered softly, "You're going to meet someone special tomorrow, sweetheart." Her throat tightened as she said it, a mix of fear and love swirling inside her. The next afternoon, the park looked exactly as it had the day of the accident, the sunlight shimmering through the leaves, the laughter of children echoing across the playground, and the faint smell of cut grass filling the air. Emma arrived early, sitting on the same wooden bench where everything had changed. Noah ran toward the swings, laughing as the wind tousled his hair. She watched him, her chest aching with love. When she looked up, she saw Nathan approaching from a distance, dressed casually in a light shirt and jeans, his posture unsure but his expression soft. He carried a small box under his arm. A gift, she guessed. Her heart skipped. Nathan stopped a few feet away, his eyes locked on Noah, and for a moment he couldn't move. The boy was a perfect reflection of everything he had missed. The first words, the first steps, the birthdays and scraped knees, the bedtime stories. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to breathe. Emma stood to meet him, their eyes meeting in silent understanding. "He's over there," she said softly, her voice trembling. "Just be gentle. He doesn't know yet." Nathan nodded, his throat tight. "I will." When he approached the swings, Noah stopped and looked up, his face lighting up instantly. "Dr. Hayes!" he shouted, jumping off the swing and running toward him. Nathan crouched down, smiling as the boy wrapped his good arm around him in a spontaneous hug. "Hey, buddy," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "How's that arm holding up?" Noah proudly showed off the blue cast. "It's almost better. Mommy says I'll get it off soon. I've been taking care of it, no superhero stunts." Nathan laughed softly, his eyes glistening. "Good. Superman's got to stay safe if he's going to save the world." He opened the small box and handed it to Noah. Inside was a model spaceship kit. "Thought maybe you'd like to build this with me sometime," he said. Noah's eyes widened with excitement. "Really, it's awesome!" Emma watched from a distance, her heart twisting with both joy and pain. Nathan was a natural with him, gentle, funny, patient. She could see the connection forming before her eyes, something that felt both beautiful and terrifying. After an hour of playing, they all sat together on the bench watching the sunset melt into shades of orange and gold. Nathan turned to Emma, his voice low. "He's amazing," he said. "He's everything I could have dreamed of." Emma smiled faintly. "He's my whole world." Nathan hesitated, then asked softly, "When do you plan on telling him?" Emma looked down at her hands, twisting the edge of her sleeve. "I don't know. I've thought about it 1,000 times. But how do you tell a 6-year-old something that changes everything he knows?" Nathan was quiet for a moment before he said gently, "You don't make it about the past. You make it about love, about the fact that he has one more person who loves him unconditionally." His words hung in the air, warm and heavy. Emma nodded slowly, her eyes misty. "Maybe you're right. Maybe it's time." That evening, after they returned home, Emma tucked Noah into bed, her heart pounding with the decision she knew she could no longer delay. He looked at her sleepily, his lashes heavy, his blue cast resting across his chest. "Mommy," he murmured, "Dr. Hayes said he wants to see me again. Can he come over sometime?" Emma's eyes filled with tears as she brushed her fingers through his hair. "Yes, sweetheart, he can. But there's something I need to tell you about him." Noah blinked, his curiosity piqued. "What?" She hesitated, her breath catching in her throat. Then she took his small hand and held it tightly. "Do you remember when you asked me once why you don't have a dad like some of your friends?" He nodded slowly. "Well, you do have one. You always have. He's just been away for a while. The man you met at the hospital, Dr. Hayes, he's your father." Noah's eyes widened as he processed the words. For a moment, there was silence so deep Emma could hear her own heartbeat. Then he whispered, "Really? My dad?" She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes, baby. Your dad." He was quiet for a long moment, his small face thoughtful. Then, to her surprise, he smiled softly. "That's why he looked like me," he said simply, his innocence breaking her heart. "I like him, Mommy. He's nice. Can I call him Dad?" Emma's breath hitched as she nodded, unable to speak. "If you want to," she managed to say, her voice trembling. "I think he'd like that very much." Later that night, after Noah had drifted into sleep, Emma stepped outside onto the porch, the night air cool against her tear-streaked face. The sky was full of stars, and for the first time in years, she felt something shift inside her, a sense of release, of healing. The truth was finally free, and with it came a fragile kind of peace she hadn't known she needed. As she looked up at the stars, her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Nathan. "Thank you for letting me be part of his life. I'll never take it for granted." Emma smiled through her tears, her fingers hovering over the screen before she typed back, "He asked if he could call you Dad." She waited, and within seconds his reply came, simple and full of emotion. "That's the greatest gift anyone's ever given me." And somewhere deep inside, Emma realized that this wasn't just the revelation of a father and a son, it was the beginning of a family being rewritten by love, forgiveness, and fate's quiet grace. The healing. The following weeks unfolded like a sunrise after a long storm, slow, hesitant, but filled with the kind of beauty that only comes after years of darkness. For Emma, every day felt like stepping into a new reality she had never dared to imagine. Nathan had quietly begun to weave himself into their lives, not as a stranger imposing on old wounds, but as a gentle presence who brought warmth to every moment. He started small, picking up Noah from school once a week, helping with his science homework, taking him to the park to feed the ducks, and always keeping his promises. The first time he showed up after promising to take Noah to the planetarium, Emma had expected him to cancel, half prepared to see disappointment in her son's eyes again. But Nathan arrived 5 minutes early, a smile on his face and tickets in hand. That single gesture shattered 6 years of fear more effectively than any words could. Noah's laughter as he described the glowing constellations that night was the kind of joy Emma hadn't seen since he was a toddler. It was the sound of trust returning, and it softened something inside her that had been locked away too long. For Nathan, every interaction with Noah was both a gift and a quiet ache. The boy's energy, his curiosity, his questions about everything under the sun, all of it filled him with pride and regret in equal measure. Sometimes he would find himself studying Noah's face when the boy wasn't looking, memorizing the details he had missed, the way his nose wrinkled when he laughed, the way he bit his lip when he concentrated, the way he slept curled up with his stuffed astronaut. Each of these small details felt sacred, like lost time being returned in fragments. There were moments when he'd have to turn away, overwhelmed by the guilt of not having been there when Noah took his first steps or said his first words. But Emma saw it too, the way his shoulders tensed when Noah mentioned the past, and it broke her heart. One evening, after Noah had gone to bed, she found Nathan sitting on the porch, his elbows resting on his knees, staring out into the darkness with that haunted look in his eyes. She stepped outside quietly, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders, and sat beside him without speaking. The night was cool, the crickets chirping softly, and the scent of jasmine filled the air. For a long time, they just sat there, the silence stretching between them not as a barrier but as an understanding. When Nathan finally spoke, his voice was low, almost fragile. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" he asked, still staring at the night sky. Emma's throat tightened. "All the time," she admitted softly. "Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choices. I tell myself I did what I had to do, but when I see you with him..." Her voice trailed off. Nathan turned to her, his expression full of empathy. "You did what you thought was best. You kept him safe. You gave him love. That's all that matters. I don't blame you, Emma. I blame myself for not fighting harder, for letting time slip away." His words were heavy with regret, but there was no bitterness, only sincerity. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw not the young man who had left, but the man who had learned what loss meant. There was a strength in him now, a gentleness shaped by years of experience. She felt her heart tremble, remembering the way it used to race whenever he looked at her like that. They stayed like that for a long time, the quiet between them full of unspoken forgiveness. Eventually, Nathan smiled faintly and said, "He's incredible, Emma. You've done such an amazing job raising him." She blinked back tears. "He's everything I have," she whispered. "He's my reason for everything." Nathan nodded slowly, his eyes soft. "And now he's mine too. I don't want to miss another moment." He hesitated, then added, "I want to be there. For both of you." His voice cracked slightly, and Emma felt something shift inside her. For years, she had built walls around her heart, telling herself she was protecting it, but now, sitting beside him under the starlit sky, those walls began to crumble. Over the next few weeks, their lives began to intertwine in ways that felt both natural and unfamiliar. Nathan would show up on Saturday mornings with pancakes from Noah's favorite diner, claiming that the chef made them better than he ever could. They'd sit together at the kitchen table, Noah talking nonstop about space and dinosaurs, his cast now gone but still signed by his friends. Nathan listened intently, asking questions, laughing at every story and never once checking his phone. A small thing, but one that didn't go unnoticed by Emma. She started to see the father in him, not the man who had left, and it made her heart ache with a mix of gratitude and longing. One Saturday afternoon, after a morning of building the spaceship model they had started weeks ago, Noah turned to Nathan and said something that caught both adults off guard. "Dad, do you think astronauts ever get scared before flying into space?" The word "dad" hung in the air, soft but powerful. Nathan froze, his eyes widening. Emma, standing by the doorway, felt her breath hitch. Noah, oblivious to the weight of his words, continued, "Because I think they're brave. But even brave people get scared sometimes, right?" Nathan blinked rapidly, swallowing hard before answering. "Yeah, buddy," he said gently, his voice thick with emotion. "Even the bravest people get scared. But the important thing is, they go anyway." He smiled faintly. "And I think you're one of those brave ones, too." Noah grinned, satisfied with the answer, and went back to coloring the spaceship. Emma had to look away to hide her tears. The simple, innocent way Noah had accepted Nathan into his life as his father was something she had prayed for and feared in equal measure. Seeing it now felt like a miracle she didn't deserve. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the golden light filled the kitchen, Emma found herself standing beside Nathan while he washed the dishes. It felt strangely domestic, achingly familiar. She handed him a plate, their fingers brushing lightly. The touch lingered, unintentional but charged. "You've changed," she said quietly. He smiled without looking up. "I had to. Life has a way of forcing you to grow up when you lose the things that matter." She studied his profile, the lines of age and exhaustion that hadn't been there before, and realized that she wasn't the same person either. "Maybe we both did," she said softly. Nathan turned, drying his hands on a towel, and met her gaze. "Emma," he began, his tone careful, "I don't want to rush anything. But being around you and Noah again, it feels right. It feels like home." His words hung between them, raw and honest. Emma's heart fluttered, fear and hope colliding inside her. "Nathan," she said, her voice trembling, "I don't know if I can go through losing you again." He stepped closer, his voice steady. "You won't. I'm not that man anymore. I'm here to stay." Before she could reply, Noah came running in, holding a picture he had drawn. "Look!" he said excitedly, waving it in the air. "It's us! Mommy, me, and Dad!" He beamed proudly, showing them a crayon drawing of the three of them holding hands under a blue sky. Emma and Nathan exchanged a glance that said everything neither of them could put into words. The healing wasn't just happening between them. It was happening through the small, simple moments that Noah unknowingly created. The laughter, the dinners, the shared silences, they were all stitches in the fabric of a family being mended. One night, as rain tapped softly against the windows, Emma sat by the fireplace reading while Nathan helped Noah build a small rocket out of cardboard. The glow of the fire reflected on their faces, and she watched them with quiet awe. Nathan was patient, guiding Noah's hands, teaching him how to make the fins align properly. When the rocket was done, Noah looked up and smiled. "It's perfect," he declared. Nathan laughed, touseling his hair. "Just like you, kid." Emma's chest swelled with emotion. For the first time in 6 years, her home felt full, not just of sound and warmth, but of something deeper. Love, real and whole, had found its way back. Later that night, after Noah was asleep, Nathan stood at the doorway, watching the boy with quiet reverence. Emma joined him, her arms folded. "He looks so peaceful," she whispered. Nathan nodded, his voice low. "I missed this. I missed so much." She placed a hand on his arm, her touch gentle. "You're here now," she said softly. "That's what matters." He looked at her, his eyes full of gratitude. "You saved him, Emma. And somehow you saved me, too." Her heart ached at the sincerity in his tone. She smiled faintly. "Maybe we're saving each other." That night, as they stood together in the soft glow of the nightlight, watching their son sleep, something unspoken passed between them, a quiet promise that the pain of the past no longer defined them. The healing wasn't complete, but it had begun, and this time, neither of them intended to let it slip away. The promise. The morning sun streamed through the pale curtains of their living room, spilling golden light over the scattered toys and the faint scent of breakfast cooking in the kitchen. Emma had woken early, as she always did, to the quiet hum of the city and the soft rhythm of Noah's breathing from the next room. Today felt different. Not just a day marked on the calendar, but a day carrying the weight of a new beginning. The last few weeks had been a delicate dance of rediscovery, of forging connections and rebuilding trust that had been lost to time, distance, and unspoken fears. Nathan had become a presence as natural as the sunlight itself. A man who could make Noah laugh until his cheeks hurt, who could calm him with a simple word or gesture, and who had shown Emma a version of love she had long thought lost. There were moments, simple and ordinary, that felt monumental. Nathan helping Noah with his breakfast, the boy's eager hands stretching out for his father to tie his shoes. Nathan kneeling beside the small bed to read bedtime stories in his deep, steady voice. Each action was a stitch in the delicate fabric of a life that had been torn apart, now slowly mending under the tender care of honesty, trust, and the quiet courage of hearts that refused to stay broken. Emma stood in the doorway, watching them from a distance, her chest swelling with an emotion too complex for words. There was gratitude, yes, but there was also awe at the courage it had taken to let him back in, the bravery of risking heartbreak again after so much loss. Nathan looked up from the table, his green eyes catching hers, and gave her a small, almost imperceptible smile. It was a silent acknowledgement of shared victories and shared fears, a wordless conversation of souls who had endured long enough to appreciate what they had finally found. Emma returned the smile, feeling the heat rise to her cheeks and the familiar flutter of a heart that had once known deep love and devastating loss. For a moment, it was as if the years of pain, silence, and distance were nothing more than a shadow slipping away in the morning light, leaving only clarity, hope, and possibility. Noah's laughter rang out as he ran to Nathan, carrying a stack of freshly colored drawings. "Look, Dad! Look what I made!" he exclaimed, his eyes wide with pride and joy. Nathan crouched to take the drawings, his voice warm and filled with admiration. "These are incredible, buddy. You're a genius artist." Noah beamed, and Emma's heart clenched with a combination of relief and love. This was the life she had hoped for. Not perfect, perhaps, but filled with authenticity, connection, and the kind of shared moments that truly matter. Nathan stood, holding Noah's hands in his, and together they danced a small, silly circle around the living room, the morning sun catching in their hair and laughter. Emma laughed softly, a sound she hadn't allowed herself in years, and felt a tear slip down her cheek. The house was alive with the sound of healing, the sound of love being reclaimed. Later that day, they decided to go for a walk in the park, the same park that had marked the beginning of their reunion. Noah skipped ahead, occasionally turning to show Nathan a bird or a flower, his voice carrying across the open field like a song. Emma walked beside Nathan, her hand brushing against his, tentative but not afraid. They spoke quietly, sharing memories of the past and hopes for the future, weaving a tapestry of trust that had been absent for far too long. Nathan reached out, gently taking her hand in his, and Emma felt the warmth of his touch anchoring her, reassuring her that he was here to stay. She looked up at him, her eyes meeting his, and saw a reflection of her own longing, her own hope, mirrored in his steady gaze. "I promise," he said softly, his voice full of conviction. "I'll never let him or you go again. We'll face everything together. I don't want to miss another moment." Emma's throat tightened, and for a long moment she could not speak. Words felt inadequate in the presence of truth, love, and the fragile miracle of family being restored. Finally, she whispered, "I believe you. And I'm ready to trust again, Nathan, for him and for us." Nathan's lips curved into a tender smile, and together they turned to Noah, who was now sitting under a tree, proudly showing a tiny ant the way it moved along the ground. Nathan knelt beside him, gently lifting him into his lap, and Noah laughed, wrapping his arms around his father's neck. Emma watched, her heart full, tears streaming freely now, the kind of tears that cleanse, heal, and release. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, painting the park in hues of gold and amber, they walked home together, hand in hand, a family beginning to understand its own strength. There would be challenges, certainly, questions of the past, moments of doubt, and days when old wounds might ache anew. But for the first time, Emma knew they could face anything. Nathan's presence was steady, unwavering, and full of love. Noah's laughter and trust provided a bridge to the future. And Emma felt the weight of the years lift, replaced by hope, forgiveness, and a quiet certainty that some things, even after being lost, could be found again. That night, after Noah had fallen asleep, Emma and Nathan sat on the porch under a blanket of stars, the cool night air wrapping around them. Nathan reached out, holding her hand gently, as if to anchor both of them in the reality they had finally created. "We have so much to make up for," he said quietly. "I know I can't change the past, but I can be here now. I can love both of you the way I should have all along." Emma leaned her head against his shoulder, letting herself breathe in the warmth, the reassurance, and the promise of a future they would write together. "We'll take it one day at a time," she whispered, "and we'll do it together." Nathan's arm wrapped around her, holding her close, and they stayed like that for a long time, listening to the soft rustle of leaves, the distant sound of the city, and the quiet rhythm of hearts learning to trust, forgive, and love again. In the weeks and months that followed, their lives continued to evolve. Nathan became more than a visitor or a presence. He became a father in every sense of the word. He attended parent-teacher meetings, celebrated milestones with pride, and shared in both the ordinary and extraordinary moments of Noah's life. Emma allowed herself to lean on him, to trust him with her heart once more, and in doing so discovered that love, when nurtured with honesty and patience, could heal even the deepest scars. The house, once quiet and shadowed with past regrets, became alive with laughter, conversation, and the small victories that define family. And every evening when the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma, Nathan, and Noah would sit together, holding hands, hearts intertwined, knowing that no matter what storms might come, they had found each other. And that promise, the promise of presence, love, and unwavering commitment, would guide them through everything yet to come. And in that moment, beneath the stars that had silently witnessed their journey, they were whole.